Thank you for joining us today, Blair.
Oh, it's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you ended up at Felton Road in Central Otago?
Well, I grew up on a farm in the rural Waikato in the North Island of New Zealand, and I went off to university to study horticultural science at Lincoln, just outside of Christchurch. And I spent the third year of my degree on an exchange program to Oregon State University, and I got interested in viticulture and wine science there. And when I returned to complete my studies, Lincoln had just started a postgraduate diploma in viticulture and enology, and so I took those classes.
Tell me about the beginning of your time at Felton Road, what it was like starting at a brand new winery.
I was very lucky. One of my classmates, Stuart Alms, was there as a mature student, and as the oldest in the class, I was the youngest in the class. They paired us up as wine chemistry lab partners, and Stuart had shown me some photos of the vineyard that he was developing at Bannockburn, Central Otago. I was just off on my way to make wine in Napa Valley, and Stuart said he might be looking for a winemaker in a couple of years and stay in touch. So we corresponded by letter, as you did in those days, and letters got more and more serious as I was designing a winery for him, and then he offered me a position to start this new project, Felton Road in Bannockburn, Central Otago. And that was we met in 1990, and I started there in 96, building the winery, readying the property for the 97 vintage.
Can you speak to the evolution of viticulture and winemaking in New Zealand and what role Sauvignon Blanc has played in that?
Well, New Zealand had viticulture from the early part of last century, but it was really not until the 1980s that we started producing fine wine in any sort of serious volume. And Sauvignon Blanc was first planted in Marlborough in the 70s, and those wines started appearing on shelves. But when I was still a student in 1990, Müller-Thurgau was still our most planted variety, and it wasn't until 1995 when Sauvignon Blanc plantings eclipsed Müller-Thurgau. So I think that really highlights just how far we've come. And back then we only had 6,000 hectares of grapevines in total, and now there's over 42,000. So a lot of that growth happened through the 90s and early 2000s. And Sauvignon Blanc played a large part in that growth, obviously. But then there's small pockets of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in particular in a lot of regions outside of Marlborough, Central Otago being one of those.
Do you think New Zealand is redefining its premium wine identity beyond Sauvignon Blanc?
I would definitely say so. We've been producing Pinot Noir and Chardonnay at Felton Road since 1997, and right from the very beginning, we've been an export-led wine brand, with our wines being available in over 40 countries around the world. So I would say that Felton Road is a strong part of that movement to showcase premium Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, as aside from the larger volumes of Sauvignon Blanc that are grown and produced and exported from New Zealand.
And can you tell me about the region, Central Otago, and what makes it so unique for viticulture?
Central Otago's is a unique region for New Zealand. The other regions are all maritime influenced and all located on the coast, and that's where they're getting their cool climate influence from, is that ocean sea breeze. Whereas Central Otago, we describe it as semi-continental. We're inland, we're tucked up against the Southern Alps to the west of us. It's we experience very cold winters, but then warm summertime temperatures because we don't have the ocean sea breeze. It's also a very dry climate in the rain shadow of the Southern Alps. So low rainfall accompanied by cool nighttime temperatures is absolutely ideal for varieties like Riesling, Chardonnay, and Pinot Noir. and the soils seem to be of a suitable range. They're quite varied, so you can have schist gravel soils. We have a lot of quartz in the soil as well, but they're relatively free draining soils of glacial origin, and it just depends on where you are on a particular slope as to what combination of silt and loess you might have relative to the either alluvial soils or glacial derived soils.
And what is your philosophy of winemaking and viticulture?
I would say we're definitely, if I can use the French term, terroir in New Zealand. We've used the word turanga waiwai, means our standing place. It's our version of the word terroir. And we're really wanting to make wines that speak of the place that they grow in. So very intensive viticulture, which is what led us into organics and biodynamics, and focusing on allowing the wines to really express their sense of place. And so, hands-off winemaking, indigenous yeast, indigenous malos, minimal use of new oak, not fining, not filtration, not filtering the wines, is the hallmarks of our winemaking process.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your approach with biodynamics and why you decided to head down that road?
We started with organics in 2002 and introducing biodynamics the following year, 2003. We had an influential and leading organic wine grower in New Zealand that was biodynamic. So James Milton at Milton Vineyards in the North Island was very helpful and influential to not only ourselves but a lot of other organic viticulturalists in New Zealand. And I'd been exposed to organics and biodynamics from my time in Burgundy in 1996 and a visit with Anne-Claude Leflèvre at Domaine Leflèvre, and that's where I first was exposed to biodynamics. And we really see biodynamics as a tool in the cupboard that really assists with organic viticulture. A lot of it is can be a bit wacky. Steiner was definitely out there, and so some of the techniques we struggle to understand, but we definitely see it working, and as I said, a tool in the cupboard that really makes organics work.
And when you say you see it working, you mean in the taste of the wines or?
Just the balance and the harmony that you see in the vineyards is they're more resilient to extreme weather events. That's one thing, but a really important aspect of biodynamics that we enjoy is the team culture that it brings to the property. And when you see the vineyard team out there, stirring on preparations and applying preparation 500 or 501 to the vineyard, they might have arrived at the property in the early hours of the morning to begin stirring and to dynamize the 501 and then sprinkling it out to capture the sun's rays falling on the property early in the morning. And then when I turn up, they're all sitting there having a big breakfast with the eggs that they collected from the chickens over the previous few days, and just the team building and camaraderie that brings is a really interesting and really tangible effect of biodynamics that we really appreciate.
Sure.
And we have no end of applicants, wanting to come work with us. A lot of young Europeans mainly, but also from USA, Canada, Australia. Lots of recent graduates or kids that have coming from winemaking families that want to experience viticulture and winemaking at a leading estate in the Southern Hemisphere. So that's another real benefit.
And how would you describe the style of your Pinot Noir? Is it a New World sort of fruity style compared to, say, a Burgundy?
Well, there's no denying that it is going to be New World, but for whatever that meaning, what that means today, because I think even the Old World, if we say that again, or Burgundy is changing drastically with climate change and with temperatures warming and styles changing, that I think there's less difference between old world and new world regions, and I think it's just one world is how we're starting to see the wines, and particularly as our vines are getting older and older, their roots down deeper, we're getting more and more experience that there is less of a difference, and I think we're all on this planet together.
So, speaking of climate change, are there any different choices in the vineyards or in the cellar that you have to make now?
We're fortunate in New Zealand that being a couple of small islands in a cold ocean, the Southern Ocean and the Southern Pacific, very cold bodies of water, that we're not seeing the dramatic increase in temperatures like continental land masses experiencing. So we're still extremely conscious of the effect that climate change is having to the planet. And so, for example, we've signed up to an organization, IWCA, International Wineries for Climate Action, to minimize our carbon emissions and be a responsible wine growing business that is committed to zero emissions by 2050.
And you make several single block Pinot Noirs. How can you tell us the difference between those vineyards and how it is expressed in the glass?
So we have 4 vineyards, all in the Bannockburn subregion of Central Otago, starting from the Elms Vineyard, where the winery is located and where we first started planting in 1992. It's a complex site in a north-facing valley where we have 13 different parcels, or blocks as we refer to them as, on the hillside, and planted to Pinot Noir, Chardonnay and Riesling. And then just less than a kilometre along the road, we have our Macmura and Calvert vineyards planted to Pinot Noir, a small amount of Chardonnay at Calvert, and then it's 5 kilometres further east to our Cornish Point vineyard. And we make a Bannockburn blend, which is a composition of those 4 vineyards, but then we bottle single vineyard bottlings from Cornish Point, Calvert, Macmura, and within the Elms Vineyard we have block designated bottlings. And so that's really to capture the essence of the site, and by having very transparent winemaking, consistent winemaking between all of the parcels that we vinify, to allow that vineyard character to express itself.
And you also grow some Chardonnay and Riesling. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Well, with Pinot Noir doing so well in Central Otago, it's just a natural choice that we should be growing Chardonnay as well. And our style of Chardonnay, because we've planted the Chardonnay on the freer draining gravel soils, whereas we prefer to plant the Pinot on the heavier, more silt-laden soils with more glacial loess and more heavy textured clay loam soils. The Chardonnay, being on the lighter, gravelier soils, tends to be a very finer bone style of Chardonnay that is not significantly weighty or too heavy, and as a result we've got to be very careful with the winemaking on that. So very transparent, minimal use of new oak, but still I would say a more ethereal, lighter, finer bones expression. And because we have the lovely cool climate in Central Otago with cold nighttime temperatures, acid is always going to be a feature. So it is finer, racier, more mineral infused style of Chardonnay. And then Riesling might be a bit of a seen as a bit left field when I've just been talking about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but Riesling has always grown very, very well on the South Island of New Zealand across the different regions. And Riesling is such a unique variety, being able to make it in the dry styles as well as the off-dry sweeter styles, which is a style that we've always championed because of the high acidity and the lovely schist gravel soils and the expression of sort of mineral sort of tones to the style of Riesling that we produce.